What's up, Johnny Depp fam? It's your boy William of Ockham here, bringing you the big bombs like I promised. And yes, a caveat, I have over the past few weeks developed a Hollywood contact that has been providing me with some information that has made the penny drop in the bucket. In other words, the story has really come together with the information that I've gathered from this individual who's kindly provided me with a lot of information, as a matter of fact. I'd like to... This person has worked with Harvey Weinstein specifically, and I would like to quote this person who said, "I would not call him a god," which is what he was called during the Oscars for whatever reason. "I would not call him a god, and nor would anyone. He is and always has been a slimy wheeling dealer, bad-tempered thug who miraculously showed up with beautiful women on his arms and whose parties all the young models wanted to go to." Direct quote from my Hollywood contact. Shout out. So I also want to put a caveat together that this video, the topic of this video, the theme of this video was suggested by my first Patreon supporter. Shout out to Ozzy, known as Bubalonia Rising. Tags at Mandos on Twitter. Go give him a follow. He's an awesome guy, and he's the one who chose this topic. The question that he asked was, where's the money coming from? Well, where's Amber getting the money for all of these court proceedings and the appeal and all of that business? And led me thinking down a few roads and pieced a few things together, and my contact gave me some information about this. We've decided to call this Movie Mobsters because that's essentially what they are, and I'll outline that as we move along. Also, a friend, Gaslighting Gilligan on Twitter, has critiqued the work, suggesting that me and others are simply following the money and that human motivation, etc., goes beyond that, and I would agree. However, this is for Gilligan. Shout out, man. You made some great points. The thing is, though, is money isn't money any longer. This is all about exchange value, as it's known prophetically from our beloved and hated friend Karl Marx. And that exchange value can be understood as capital. So we're not following the money. We're tracing the capital. And capital, friends, I need you to understand this conceptual component to my analysis. Capital, in terms of how it was popularized by Pierre Bourdieu, is that it can apply in any exchange of value, whether it's cultural, social, what have you. I'm sure, my dear viewers, you can understand that you can exchange different forms of capital value. And that's what this entire breakdown will depend on, is that understanding. If you trace the capital, the flows of capital, you can identify the nodes of power that are dealing in that capital and giving that capital its value, so on and so forth. So I've also had some questions about my name, William of Ockham. Everybody has an idea of who William of Ockham is. Occam's razor, my friends, if you don't know, is it's a philosophical tool. William of Ockham was an English Franciscan philosopher and scholar. You can see this funny little comic here. He's looking at the quadruple blade. That's too complicated. Occam's razor isn't about complexity being wrong. It's important, dear viewer, that you understand the difference, what I'm talking about, the difference between easy and simple. So Occam's razor is about the doctrine of parsimony, and parsimony is a proclamation or a doctrine that abides by this rule: entities should not be multiplied unnecessarily. And you might be asking, well, William, you've multiplied it into all of these different actors, etc., and so on. That's not what the doctrine means. The difference between easy and simple is an important one to understand. Why? Because easy means something doesn't take much effort or isn't too difficult. And complex and difficult are different. So we're not talking about the easy route when we're talking about simplicity. Parsimony suggests the simplest answer or hypothesis is usually the right one. In order to get to that hypothesis, you have to falsify a whole bunch of other hypotheses which is a very complex process. And simplicity, if you can understand it, tends towards elegant complexity. I know this seems counterintuitive, but you need to understand it in terms of simplicity as this elegantly complex map, in a sense. So the reason I also identify as William of Ockham is William of Ockham, he challenged scholasticism and the papacy, or the Pope, which thereby hastened the end of the medieval period. Obviously, his claim to fame is Occam's razor, the principle of parsimony, or the concept that plurality should not be posited without necessity. He, in his challenge to the papacy, what he had suggested is that God has the ultimate command and as to what is right or wrong, and thus the Pope has no power to make those determinations. And in that challenge, in undermining the Pope's authority, he was deemed an outlaw. He fled with his Franciscan brothers and did a lot of his work in hiding. Hence why I identify with him, because these powerful actors that I am calling out they don't fool around. And so I too am in hiding to a degree. So William and I, we share that. So moving along from these caveats and explanations, let's get into the meat of this. But let's take another quick look at the comic, because that is funny. Anyway, into the meat of it. There's a new name on the board, as you can see. I absolutely suggest that you watch my video on Michelle Dauber, Me Too, and radical feminism. It'll inform a lot of what we're talking about here. A lot of similar names will pop up. These are intertwined, and so the Dauber video is a necessary watch for you to understand this. I'll post links in the description. I'll also put some cards up at the end of the video. So, David Bonderman. Who is David Bonderman? Well, let's take a look. He is the founding partner of TPG Capital. This is an important thing for you to grasp. Why? Because TPG Capital has an Asian affiliate known as Newbridge Capital. So David Bonderman, worth $4.5 billion, owns a company that deals in capital investments in the U.S. as well as over in China, Malaysia, etc., so on. So, dear viewer, I need you to grasp that we've already established a connection to the East here. And now I need to explain to you how David Bonderman is tied up in all of this so that you can understand. Well, TPG Capital, his company, was formerly known as the Texas Pacific Group. And he's also part owner of the Celtics, co-founder, co-majority owner of Seattle Kraken, etc. He actually co-owns it with Jerry Bruckheimer, so you can already see his tie-ins to Hollywood. What's more is his company TPG Capital, in and around 2010, David, along with TPG Capital, they acquired a 35% stake in CAA. And this is an important consideration because CAA, otherwise known as the Creative Arts Agency, is they're a very powerful Hollywood and sports representative. You can look them up on Wikipedia, so on and so forth, other sources. But the important thing is to understand that they're representatives for a wide range of talent in Hollywood as well as in the sports world. And you can see now already how Mr. Bonderman has his hands in the honeypot here. And I established, I think, that he's a player in this game. But how is he connected is the important part. So let's back up here. And we make sure that we take a look at the other connections. So how does this tie in? Well, on top of the fact that he had acquired the 35% stake in Creative Arts Agency, I need to address the connections that this agency, as well as Bonderman and the other actors involved, the connections that they had elsewhere. So, in that acquisition of Creative Arts Agency, he was aided by Harvey Weinstein. Harvey Weinstein is a good friend of one of the creative arts agency's partners, Brian Lord. And as you well might know, Bob Iger of Disney purchased Miramax, Weinstein's film company. And so you can see these connections coming together now. Let's take a little bit closer look, though, why I've brought the DNC into this. Why? Well, Weinstein was friends with the Clintons and thereafter the Obamas. So tying this together again, Harvey's friendship with Brian Lord at CAA was strengthened in and around 2008 when Brian introduced Harvey to Bob Iger. And it was these relationships that helped Harvey get back on his feet again, because it's rumored that throughout the early 2000s, Weinstein was actually quite broke. My contact that I mentioned before, who knows Weinstein, can confirm this, that in and around the early 2000s, the rumor was pretty strong that Harvey Weinstein was broke. And he made these friendships, Brian Lord, subsequently becoming friends with the Clintons, and thereafter with the Obamas. Weinstein was publicly named as a major donor to the Democratic National Committee. But in truth, he apparently didn't actually donate very much. He was more of a symbolic donor. And here's where the Bourdieu's understanding of capital is important, because Weinstein, through his film production, through his contacts and connections, he was able to bring a level of social and cultural capital to the Democratic National Committee through all of these connections and his capacities in the film business. So also on top of that, there's strange rumors, and again, my Hollywood contact can confirm this, that there's also articles online about it, but it's just funny to hear it being confirmed by a real live living person. In 2013, the Sundance Party apparently was strangely sex themed, with young girls dancing, pole dancing. It was a fiasco, no less. As you can see here, there's various types of capital that are accumulating at this point with these connections from Weinstein to Bonderman and Creative Arts Agency and their connections with the Democratic National Committee. All of this money started accumulating, this capital, not just money, not just financial capital, but also social, cultural capital. Different forms were accumulating for these various parties, persons, and entities. And of course, as the old hip-hop adage goes, man, more money, more problems, my friends. More money, more problems. Well, it would seem that Weinstein had been flying back and forth to Malaysia throughout this time. He has there's been confirmation that he's invested overseas. He invested overseas at the time, not just in China, in Malaysia as well. The IMDb, I think it's called, the Malaysian bank over there. Weinstein had been investing over there a lot of money, and in fact, my contact can confirm that this is the primary means by which he funded the well-known series Marco Polo. His connections and investments with banks and financiers, including the governments in the East, basically confirms and outlines how the East, China, Malaysia, etc., had their hands in his pockets, and consequently, with his connections, they had their hands in the pockets of Hollywood more generally, and this will become, the importance of this will become much more apparent as we move along. However, by 2015, it would seem that everybody went broke ass from these investments and mismanagement of funds. There's a wide variety of reasons for that. But not only was Weinstein apparently broke at the time, but it's rumored and fully reported on in different spots that the DNC was in desperate need of funding in and around that time, around 2016. So Weinstein's broke. The DNC needs money. What's the solution here? Well, in 2016, Creative Arts Agency ran an internet ad, sort of a tester of the market. It's very strange if you take a look at it. It featured 4 white, very Western CAA partners as the main speakers. Well, needless to say, there must have been some social psychological impetus that demanded these creative arts agents and financiers to produce this kind of like strangely very Western ad pitch. Well, let's give that some thought with the Red Connection. Those advertising pitches as a test. Think about it. Chinese had been building their own film industry throughout this time. And they wanted to spend a lot of money, and my contact confirms that they had actually offered some of this person's clients some money in order to get Academy nominated filmmakers to make films in China. And as that money's pouring in, the Chinese government then started to crack down on content and on who was involved. And it started to become harder for the money for the capital to be accumulated. So as these investments are flowing in from China into Hollywood, that China began to exercise control over the flow of capital. Now, this is where it's important that we take a look back at how TPG as well as CAA have offices in Beijing and in China. So the flow of capital starts to open up globally, and China wants a piece. Now, I have to address DNC and Malia Obama in a moment, but I want you to take a look at this image of Amber Heard. Now, you can call me crazy, but I know, as a trained social psychologist, I know for a fact that projection is everything. That symbolic capital is everything. This picture, if you cannot grasp it yet, allow me to please implant into your brain cells the notion that this is propaganda. It's all red. The dress is red. The lipstick is red. The car is red. Think about it, friends. Give it some thought here. Strangely, it was during this time, in and around 2016 or so, and you all know what was going on around 2016 or so with Johnny and Amber. During this time, Malia Obama went to intern for Harvey Weinstein to learn the ropes of producing. Vanity Fair even did a puff piece on it to promote it. You can take a look. Malia went to the Sundance Film Festival with Harvey Weinstein in 2017. Allegedly, Ronan Farrow was prepared to do an expose on Harvey and his, let's call them, lecherous activities. Prepared to do an expose in February 2010, but it got shut down by NBC. Why? Who was about to work with NBC when this happened, or was already in negotiations? Obama's press secretary. Harvey went down. Tulip Fever, the film that he made in 2017, got trashed, and there was no way it was going to have an Oscar run. Strangely, featured in that film, none other than Cara Delevingne. So, if Tulip Fever hadn't gotten trashed, then CAA, TPG, Broderman, they would have probably protected Harvey. But he apparently owed clients of CAA, like fundraisers, donors, the Obamas, Clintons, Bidens, everybody else that's invested in the DNC and across the board. Harvey owed everybody money. My contact even confirms that one of her clients was owed upwards of $200,000 by Harvey. So you can only imagine how much debt he was in. More money, more problems, friends. More money, more problems. Now, with all of this shit going down, and no fucking solutions in sight. What would all of these powerful corporate governmental hegemonic actors do, these oligarchs? What would they do to resolve this issue so they could keep playing their games? Well, friends, it's all about the brand. So, CAA and Disney, as you well know at this point, I've pointed out how creative arts agents were central to the global flow of capital when it comes to movie making, which is quite obviously worth a lot of money. Everybody knows this. And Disney, central to global movie making and this constant flow of capital. They were central. Who was on Disney? Who was the franchise brand that Disney had at the time? Well, Pirates came out, I think it was 2003, maybe 2005. I can't remember off the top of my head. But obviously, Johnny and Pirates was central to Disney's franchise. And it's important for us to understand this outline that I've laid down for you, so that we can see these big moving parts. This is why it can be difficult to grasp the whole breadth and depth of what's gone on here, because they're glacial bits. It's like tectonics. It's difficult to track, and that's why we all need to work together to do our best to inform one another about these kinds of activities. So this outline is complete that I've provided you, but I need to now take your attention to the brand. Who manages the brand? Well, PR firms obviously manage the brand. And who was a PR manager for the Obamas during this time? None other than Precision Strategies, my friends. PR team for Amber Heard, the Obamas, Planned Parenthood, Women's March. It's just so obvious at this point, and this is what I meant by penny in the bucket. The DNC was involved in all of this, my friends. Yes, they were. So, on the ground, we've kind of put the glacial or tectonic pieces together that are shifting and overlapping and imbricating. Now let's look at the boots on the ground, shall we? This is where I start to get frightened for my safety. Why? Well, if you look at my analyses, I've performed I'm performing, it's still not complete, a social, psychological, criminological investigation into all of these activities using sophisticated data analysis tools and different methods that are tried and true. And you can go and take a look at my results on my website, williamofockham.com, to see how these characters are all tied together, how I discovered that they're all tied together, not just through journalistic integrity of doing the research and finding the sources, but also through scientific measures with those sources. And the intelligence community, as I've pointed out as well in my video on Michelle Dauber, and I've pointed out here as well, the intelligence community has deep ties into the film industry. And one of those deep ties is connecting Harvey Weinstein to Relativity Media owner and founder Ryan Kavanaugh, who was also the CEO and first chair of the board of the Art of Elysium alongside Jennifer Howell. He was, not on paper at least, co-founder of the Art of Elysium. He's invested tremendous amounts of money into the ACLU as well. Not only that, but Mr. Kavanaugh, who's now onto a cryptocurrency type of enterprise, as well as working with Snoop Dogg to broadcast boxing matches through a company called Triller. Ryan Kavanaugh was best friends with Harvey Weinstein. There's a lot of evidence that I provide for you on my website. You can go and check out the evidence that shows how Weinstein and Kavanaugh were basically best buddies at the time. Ryan Kavanaugh produced Amber Heard in Zombieland. He also produced her in another film I think it was 3 Days to Kill. He also handed her the Rising Star Award at Texas Film Awards. They were closely tied together. Both Weinstein and Kavanaugh were investors into a capital investment firm known as Cerberus Capital. And the CEO and founder of Cerberus Capital is a man named Steven Feinberg. Steven Feinberg was Donald Trump's choice to basically play what would be an auditing role with the intelligence board. He sat as head of Donald Trump's intelligence board. So right here, because there's no possible way that two multimillionaires like Harvey Weinstein and Ryan Kavanaugh, there's no possible way that they would invest that kind of money without at least shaking the hand of the man that's managing it. Now, that being said, these connections I'm making are clear that the CIA had direct connections straight through to the film producers at the time. Now, why is this important? Well, my Hollywood contact believes that there's a very good possibility that prior to all of these events that Amber Heard was paid escort for Mr. Broderman. I have strong intuitions as well as some evidence to suggest that she was probably involved with Ryan Kavanaugh as well. That being said, all of these connections on top of that are flowing on top of the Me Too movement, which is in full swing at this point, and with the full force of radical feminism. Now, that brings us to the question, what would they do to resolve the issue? With all of these connections in place that I've outlined here, all of these players, Feinberg to Kavanaugh to Weinstein, Weinstein's broke, the DNC needs money, what would they do? Well, alongside how Me Too sought to, and this is a quote from Jordan Peterson, decimate the divine masculine. Radical feminism and Me Too were the processes by which, were forces by which, that sought, rather, the decimation of the divine masculine. And I have on good information that the Disney brand, the global flow of capital that flowed through franchises like Pirates of the Caribbean, that China wanted a piece of. Well, I need you to think about it in this way, friends. In China, Chinese industries don't like sexual deviance. They don't like gender variance. In other words, they're anti-homosexuality. And I think that's a clear point that's been made that everybody already knows about. But essentially, the Chinese film industry did not like JD's or Johnny Depp's portrayal of Captain Jack because it was kind of gay. And it's great. Everybody loves it. But the Chinese did not like that. And with the culmination at the apex of all of these forces coming together, and the agents that I've outlined, from Broderman to Weinstein to Feinberg to Kavanaugh, all working together, Amber Heard's available, what does everybody decide to do with the force of the Chinese government investing in the DNC, and the DNC basically being bought out by the Chinese government, and the Chinese want a huge chunk of this flow of capital that spills out of Disney and Johnny Depp? They want a piece of that. And Me Too and radical feminism are in full force. What do? This is the fucking brilliance of this plan. This is the brilliance of it. Right here. You know what they decided to do? Flip the script. Johnny is persecuted, and not just the money. I've written about how men are being persecuted for profit, financial capital. Where here's the genius of this. They persecuted him with the intention of stealing his symbolic, cultural, and social capital, his value. If you look at the emails between Amber Heard and the reps from ACLU, they even make it clear that they were looking at Johnny's value, not his money. It wasn't about his money, his wealth. That's one thing. But they're talking about even more than that over longer periods of time. They want a piece of the flow. And so Johnny's capital, his cultural and social capital that we're seeing now in droves with the appearances that he's making and the fans that are there, the amount of cultural capital that this man had. And the intention was to flip that cultural capital, flip the script, and transfer his value over to Amber Heard. Think about it, friends. Think about it for a moment, and let me bring you back to this picture. They were trying to transfer the cultural and social capital imbued in Johnny Depp to his ex-wife, Amber Heard. And if all of this had gone as planned, cannot argue that Amber Heard would have probably become, whether or not she's a good actress, would have probably become an enormous movie star. And the entire landscape of the film industry would have likely changed drastically with the control of Chinese industries. Now, I know what you're going to say, friends. Some of you are going to call me crazy. Some of you are going to say that I am way off base. I've provided the receipts. You just need to look up what I've suggested. I'll post some links downstairs in the description. I think I've outlined this effectively in what looks like a half an hour. And what we're looking at here is backed by, like I said, I have a contact that's embedded deeply in the Hollywood industry right now, who's, like I've said, who has personally met Harvey Weinstein. And the receipts are there. So I hope you've enjoyed this breakdown. I'll provide some more information as we move along to fill in the blanks, because there's a lot of other actors at play. There's a lot of other plate tectonics, and it all needs to come out. It's time for it all to come out. These are villainous people. As I move up the chain, I become a little bit more and more concerned for my safety, simply because these actors don't fuck around. I mean, it was Feinberg himself, Steven Feinberg himself. I'm going to take a moment to outline Cerberus. Cerberus owns Freedom Group. Freedom Group were the ones that made the first AR-15s. They made the AR-15s that were used at the Sandy Hook shooting. Cerberus Capital also runs a group that are called DynCorp. They own DynCorp, who are a military contractor. In other words, they're mercenaries. DynCorp, you can look it up. The receipts are all there. DynCorp have been involved in human trafficking through Bosnia and Herzegovina, as well as other locations. And needless to say, Mr. Feinberg has been on record in, I believe it was a Mexican newspaper. I'm not exactly sure. I don't remember off the top of my head. But Mr. Feinberg has been quoted as saying that if any Cerberus employee ends up with his face in the newspaper, he said that he would shoot and kill him without feeling bad about it. So I need to be a little careful as I move along here that I'm not putting my safety at risk. Nonetheless, all that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe. Stay tuned. I've got lots more coming. You can check out this video up here. Can't really see where I'm pointing. You can check that video out. That's my video on Dauber. Also, I am an ambassador to Stonesmith. Stonesmith makes these wonderful dab pens that you can use to smoke THC concentrates. They're awesome. They're rechargeable. They last for quite some time. They're smooth, easy to clean. Wonderful product. I highly recommend if you smoke THC. I smoke joints once in a while, but the concentrate is it's fabulous. So, Stonesmith Slash. They've got some other products out. Go check them out. Meanwhile, please like and subscribe. Go to my website. Read my materials. I've got a GoFundMe. You can find that in the description. And I would love it if you would choose to join my Patreon. Every little bit will help. I would love to make this my full-time job, if you will. It's going to be anyway. I can't stop. I just can't stop. And so you're going to see my face again soon, my friends. All right, fam. Peace!